Start off just on Miles again. Just where do you think the disconnect is? Because you talked a lot about how you think that this is something that you guys can turn around very quickly, and he's just been very adamant that like his words are, we're not aligned on winning right now. So where do you think the disconnect is?
Yeah, I'd say like the big thing we are aligned on is everybody wants to win. Everybody's frustrated with last year. I think where you can have a difference of opinion is the approach that takes and some of the hard decisions that have to be made as you transition forward. But like I said, like our perspective is we're going to do the things to improve the team, and one of the things that is very important is having Miles as part of the organization.
Andrew, why isn't collecting assets, rebuilding the team from them in a trade for Miles? Why isn't that the better thing to do?
Yeah, I think, Tony, there are multiple avenues to building a team and multiple approaches to collecting resources. So, look, Miles is the best defensive player in football, still in his prime, still have him under contract for multiple years, and we think it's best to have him on the roster.
Andrew, with the Rams going ahead and telling Matt Stafford that he can talk to other teams, maybe that puts it into a category where you can answer this question or not. But are you going to toss your head into the ring and make a phone call about Matt Stafford and check into that situation?
I think you can imagine why I wouldn't comment on a specific player, Mary Kay. We'll take a broad view, and any avenue that can help us, improve the team, we'll look into.
Andrew, it's no secret you guys are looking at quarterbacks this year, but there's a notion going around that this quarterback class isn't as strong as years prior. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think that remains to be seen, to be honest. I always use the example in 2017. That was supposed to be like the down year of the quarterback, and arguably the guy who retires the greatest of all time was taken 10th overall in the draft with Patrick Mahomes. So, you never really know how it's going to turn out. Like, our job is really just to do the work and get to know these guys, both as players and people, and then make the decision that we think is best for us.
Andrew, in the abstract, is it theoretically easier to find to acquire a quarterback if you're looking for one, than maybe it had been 10 years ago? In terms of, you look at like what Denver did, the Steelers did with Russell Wilson and Stafford being, some of the guys that it seems like 10 years ago that you wouldn't necessarily see that kind of prime quarterback.
I think, Chris, there's probably more diversity in terms of offensive scheme and how the quarterback can play within that. I think there's also probably more diversity in terms of physical characteristics for quarterbacks that are coming out. Like maybe 10 years ago, you wouldn't necessarily have a guy like playing the style that Mahomes or Josh Allen or even Lamar to an extent, would play. Where a lot of the top guys, they were really more your traditional, pocket passers. I think now, with how offensive football has evolved, and quite honestly how the college game has trended, it certainly does maybe like open up the aperture, so to speak, of players that will qualify for successful quarterbacks.
Andrew, you guys parted ways with Juan, obviously, but just his time here, why do you think that didn't work out how you guys envisioned? And I mean, you guys have done some good things at safety, but there's never, it seems like, been that depth fully that you guys envisioned.
Yeah, I think really the big thing with Juan is, first of all, great individual. Thought he played well when he was on the field, but the big thing was just availability. Had been a guy that had been pretty durable during his time in Kansas City, and just had a really tough time, with the calf injuries throughout his time with us. He'll go on and play well and catch on and things like that, but unfortunately, it just didn't work out with us. Let me go, Dan, because he didn't get a chance.
I just wanted to ask, in terms of having the number 2 pick and this opportunity to pick a quarterback that high, how does that factor into your process? Because obviously, you guys don't want to be in this position again. So how does the opportunity to maybe do it weigh in to this whole process?
And maybe I should ask you.
As far as having the opportunity to pick a quarterback at number 2 so high, in a position where you probably don't ever want to be again, if that makes sense.
I'd say in terms of, and do you mean in terms of what process?
Just the process of whether you would take a quarterback or would a quarterback outweigh another position, something like that.
What we'll look to do is maximize the number 2 as a resource. And that's whether we select a quarterback, select a non-quarterback, or move the asset or something else. All those decisions are unfortunately ones that we don't have to make for a couple of weeks, but we'll work through a bunch of different scenarios. And really, it starts with just like getting to know the prospects. And once we feel like we have a good feel for the prospects, then we can make some of those decisions.
In terms of,
I don't know if your answer is a part of Dan's figuring out, but assuming you get a veteran in March before the draft, whether it's free agency or trade. Do you think that will have an impact on what you do in the draft, or do you look at those things kind of independently?
It's good. There is some interconnectedness, Scott. I'm not going to say that they're completely independent, but you also have heard me say that the draft, they're largely for the longer term decisions. So they could play off one another maybe slightly, but I wouldn't say that the impact would be significant in that regard.
But how important is it to make sure you get a starting caliber quarterback before the draft?
Yeah, I'd say, Daniel, just taking out whether it's before the draft or after the draft or during the draft, improving the quarterback play, that's a big part of the offseason.
You talked about Tommy's comments about decision making and sort of re-emphasize that. Is that the trait you're looking for in a quarterback, or is there other things that sort of are at the top of your priorities?
Yeah, look, you want guys who make good decisions, they're accurate, and then that they can avoid conflict, because not everything goes perfectly on a given play, and your quarterback's got to be your great problem solver during the game.
Andrew, are you pretty confident that even though the things that we've heard from Miles about he'll do whatever it takes to get the Browns to trade him and things like that, are you pretty confident that maybe an extension, even though he says it's not about the money, maybe an extension would make him happy, or maybe a good quarterback would make him happy enough for this thing to have a nice ending for you guys, and he's here?
It's really not appropriate for me to speak for Miles. All I can do is express, really how much we value him and how much we appreciate him, and really, our desire to ensure that he remains around and our lack of a desire to move him.
So many smart people work so hard trying to scout quarterbacks, and yet it seems when you look at the results, it kind of feels like you're rolling the dice and you get the same hit rate. Why is it so hard?
I think it's hard because quarterback is the most impactful position, but it's also one of the most interconnected positions in the sport. Talk about decision making. It's a position where you're going to make 50 to 60 decisions a game and probably have the ball in your hand for 35 or 40. But at the same time, all 10 people around you have to be able to do their jobs. And really, I would say there's 10 people on the field, but it's also the people on the sideline in terms of how you're building the offense and the scheme around the individual. So there are a number of I don't want to use the word complicating factors, but maybe interdependent factors that go into it. So the evaluation process is important, but so is the integration and development process as well.
I mean, there's all this debate about fit versus talent in terms of finding a quarterback. How do you weigh those things, specifically evaluating that position?
Yeah, so I'd say this. More generally, you want to get the best player at that position that you can. Your offense should be geared towards that player's strengths, and that's any quarterback across the league. I think that if you look, I'll give a couple examples. If you look at when Baltimore selected Lamar, their quarterback was Joe Flacco. Couldn't necessarily have two more polar opposite styles. Or when Kansas City selected Patrick Mahomes, their quarterback was Alex Smith. And those organizations shifted and turned to build systems and offenses that accentuated what their young quarterbacks at the time did really, really well and minimized their weaknesses. And I think that's really what most teams do that have success when they draft a young signal caller and put them in. And that's something that we'll have to do if we bring a young signal caller on board as well.
Is Abdul Carter too light to be a 4-3 every down end?
He is not.
250?
He's not too light.
Andrew, would you guys have the money in the event that a veteran quarterback becomes available to you that would cost a lot of money? Would you have that money to go ahead and commit those resources to a veteran QB?
How is this? Our cash and cap position, like I mentioned, we always look at that on a multi-year planning perspective. It will not be prohibitive for us to do things if the opportunities present themselves.
Two more. Do you feel you're very aggressive in 22 at this time? Do you feel you will be in the same situation, look under every rock and to find a quarterback?
Yeah, we'll always be aggressive. That's something that we believe in. Now I mentioned at the podium how we pull on different levers at different times may look different depending on what opportunities present themselves. We're really fortunate this year that we have a great opportunity with the number 2 pick and 11 overall. But if there are opportunities on the veteran market or the trade market or whatever that is, that's something that we'll certainly attack in this sport.
to follow up on Chris's question about DeJuan from earlier, I mean, you were so complimentary of him after the season and that small sample size on the left, but you also talked about needing to kind of hedge some things with injuries. So does that procedure like change anything with that, or your outlook for him on the left side?
It doesn't, because it was something that we were planning. It's not something that popped up after the season. It's something that we anticipated him having going into the offseason.
Did Nick
Yeah, how do you see the rest of the offense?
We'll go 1, 2, 3. How about that?
Do you expect Nick Chubb to hit the market?
You know, I would say at this point that we do expect Nick to hit the market. You know, obviously his contract is up this year. We'll meet with his reps and everything like that. You know, but it's something that obviously we need to work on for the next couple weeks.
How do you see the rest of the offensive line? Obviously, like Jack not having any guaranteed money. I don't think Wyatt has any guaranteed money. He's talked about wanting to work on an extension. Is it your hope to kind of keep the continuity with the offensive line and maybe run it back with that group?
Yeah, I'd say Daniel. We have a lot of veterans, accomplished veterans in that group that we like a lot. Number 2, the good thing is that we do have them under contract, guarantees or not. And then number 3, the trenches is a huge priority for us. So we have a good group of veterans. We have some young guys that we like. It's probably a room that we'll continue to add to. But like those guys are good players, and certainly want them to
I didn't quite hear the. I didn't quite hear the Chubb answer, but did he need a procedure? No, I mean you just.
you know what? Honestly, Tony, I don't remember the exact specificity with that, but he's on a good place in terms of like.
What about Greg? Your favorite guys had any talks about his future, your long term?
You know, we at the end of the year we talk with all of our guys in terms of that stuff. Really, the big thing is again health probably being the major theme for us this offseason with a lot of our guys. You know, making sure that he stays healthy and stays on the field.
In terms of the top quarterbacks, Shador, Cam, are you excited about both of those guys? Do you feel good about both of those guys? And would you be happy at this point with either one?
Both those guys, they're excellent players. They're excellent prospects. We're looking forward to spending more dedicated time with them, not only this week but moving forward. They're impressive young men, not only on the field but everything that their programs say about them. So all those decisions remain to be seen, Mary Kay. But you know, it's been a good start with them so far.
Thank you.